In the frame of a long-term program funded by Sweden, we have been supporting Syrian women's rights and human rights activists and organizations in their work to end the violence in Syria for political solution towards peace and democracy, inclusive of gender equality and women's rights.
Of course, the history ought to start with Resolution 1325. And although it's 17 years since that resolution was passed, we still see that the implementation is lagging behind. First of all, make sure that you get a role at the center of the process. And if it is not given, then take it yourselves. When women are to be represented in a process like this, it's in a parallel structure. They are not there in the midst of the political process, but it is still in a parallel structure. It's in an advisory council or board. It's not. And remember, you represent 50%, if not more, of the people, more in Syria. The future has a young face, and I would say also a woman's face or a young girl's face in many countries. Of course, this will benefit also the men and the boys.
I want to mention the story that's happening right now in Homs, in Al-Wa'ar, where about 16,000 civilians are being displaced in Syria. This is part of a whole big system that the regime and its allies have been working on, calling it reconciliations, musalahat, where they have been displacing people forcefully from their neighborhoods, from their homes, and taking them to other places where they have no shelter, no food, no substance of any sort. The international community is not doing much for those people. Women are working very hard within civil society, on the ground, to document all of the violations, to work on the release of prisoners, to push for accountability. One of the things that was done, according to 1325, with the support of the 1325 resolution, is demanding the full and meaningful participation of women in all of the talks, and to be part of all of the creation of all of the bodies, to have at least 30% quota. There has to be something done by the UN under the impartial leadership of the UN to create mechanisms on the ground to hold the ceasefire. There is no more ceasefire on the ground without having a monitoring mechanism. The perpetrators of the violations of the ceasefire that was agreed upon in December 2016 cannot be monitored by the perpetrators themselves.
It's well known that we were ruled as a Syrian more than 40 years under the emergency law. Emergency law means that everything is forbidden. Under also the arresting punishment. Everything is forbidden, gathering, freedom of speech, to express anything. So it's like, that's about all citizens, not only men, but also women. The combination for all these circumstances and with corrupted economy, with also the patriarchy in Syria, and the alliance between the two tyranny. It's like the regime, the dictatorship tyranny, and the religious tyranny. With they have, you know, that exchange benefits from each other. So that's all this. I cannot, you know, create a good environment for the women. From why the women were in the front line in the revolution, because we had they had no job opportunity. It's like all the Syrian. We are a very dynamic and young society, and this corrupted economy did not offer any job opportunity, any future, any hope for the youth. The participation of the women, it was really amazing. They were the organizer for everything. We saw real leadership, in women leadership in the revolutions, the first years. Unfortunately, the violence of the regime that just faced the hate that a lot of them, they were arrested, and then most of them, they are now outside, refugees. With all this tragedy, we, the Syrian women, are now much more stronger and much more, and thank you. And now I think it's time to offer them, to support them, not to let them, because we learned from other experience that, you know, when we achieve something, when it's peace will come, and this period, the men, you know, will be, you know, ready to also to come and to be on the front line and to kick women, you know, back.
I was here last year. I had the honor and privilege of speaking at this conference last year. And I'd like to summarize some of the demands or the asks that we put forth last year. We were asking for a cessation of hostilities in 2016. We were begging for the international community to find a way to stop the bombing. We were pleading with international actors to put an end to the regime's starvation sieges. We asked the international community to take a public stand against extrajudicial courts. We were begging to have war criminals held accountable by any means. We were asking to be supported in the formation of a transitional government. We asked for sustainable relief programs so that it wasn't 1,000 refugees here and 10 displaced here, but something that would cover the more than 50% of Syria's population that is displaced or refugeed. We asked to increase the participation of women in negotiations. And we asked for civilian protection across the country. That was in 2016. In 2015, let me summarize our demands, or our asks. A cessation of hostilities, stop the killing. A public stand against torture and crimes against humanity, hold them accountable. Form a transitional government, sustainable relief, role of women in negotiations, and civilian protection. That was in 2015. Can you guess what we asked for in 2014 and 2013 and 2012? We're not just mothers and daughters and sisters. We're engineers, we're teachers, we're doctors, we're lawyers. We are the rebuilders of Syria, and this has to be taken into consideration. I want to ask the international community, what are you able to do to stop the killing? And my second ask, and this can be, the response can be in the form of a list. My second ask is, what are you willing to do to stop the killing?
I think that one message that was very clearly made by Minister Wallström, and it was very simple. More women equals more peace. And this is what here in the United Nations we try to do. Actually to support, to encourage women to participate, but especially, you know, to make men understand that it is actually better for the world, better for the peace processes, better for the future. So I think that it is important to speak about it as much as you can and in as many fora as you can in order to make this message to be understood that world must do more. It is not enough to repeat the messages every year about ceasefire, about participation, about sufferings, about accountability. And actually, you know, some could say, you know, ironically, the same message will be repeated next year. During his speech, Secretary General said in concluding part of the speech, it was on the 13th of this month when the Commission on the Status of Women started its work. And he said I ask you to hold us to our promises. Do not let us in the United Nations off the hook. Keep our feet on the fire. This is the best way how to ensure that your cause will be heard and actually will be made reality.